And we're live. Okay. Great Wednesday, Luna. Looney, how you doing? I'm sorry. Forgive me.
It's all right. I'm doing just fine. How about you?
I'm doing great. And welcome to King Connections Podcast. I'm your host, King, and I'm joined by Looney from African Eats. I read your bio on LinkedIn. I'm definitely interested in really kind of learning more about you as a conscious leader. And that's really what the purpose of the King Connections podcast are. But before I get into my first question, one of the questions I ask now initially, just to kind of set the gauge, so to speak, is what would you say your spiritual energy level number is? And the range is from 0 being life sucks to 10 being life is awesome. What would you say you
Oh, we'll
get
we'll
into
call
that?
that a 9.5 at the moment.
I love it. I
So
love it.
everything's
Re-
good here.
reason I asked that question is people who are twos or threes, I know we're not going to have a good conversation. It's going to be, the energy will be off. So thank you for indulging me with that question. So my first question I want to ask you is, what do you see as your purpose in life?
My purpose in the last decade has been tackling the big problems of the world, and specifically in the last 2 years, it's been hunger and poverty.
Ah, and within that, now we hear that term constantly in the conscious space of conscious leader, etc. So how would you define conscious leader?
That's a tough question. There's I taught college for a whole bunch of years. I had a bunch of really good guest speakers in, and one in particular was Howard Behar of Starbucks.
Hmm.
Not Howard Schultz, the CEO. Howard Behar, who's the other Howard, way less known. He was the president of the company for, I don't know, 15 years, 20 years. Um, and he helped build it from 28 companies to a lot of companies. It's 28 stores to thousands of stores. And then he left and he retired. And then they called him back in. This was during the big downturn in 08, 09. Because the company had lost its way and they needed him back. And he said in class, it's in his book as well, but he said live in class, he said the big problem the company had at the time was that too many people had joined in thinking, what's in it for me?
Hmm.
And when he left, it was about what's in it for us. Well, it's me versus we. And I think that's the key difference. And he is a conscious leader, like, and so I think that's the key difference when it comes to doing anything, whether it's nonprofits, for profits, any group of people. Are you doing it because you're trying to get something out of it yourself, because it's helping you meet your goals, or are you doing it as a group because doing it as a group can do more than doing it alone?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, what would you say you are most grateful for in your life?
Womb lottery.
I'm
Uh,
sorry.
the womb lottery. I won the womb lottery.
Oh, okay.
If people haven't heard this term before, uh, you know, we talk about inequality in life and social equalities and whatnot, but it starts with who you're born to. Like, where in the
Yeah,
world you're born, who are your parents, what is their life like? Some of us won the womb lottery, and so I didn't start at the very bottom of the ladder. I got to start a few rungs up, and I'm leveraging that to the most extent I can at the moment for everyone else who didn't win the loom lottery.
wow. I've never heard that answer before, but I love that answer, and I love that perspective on that answer as well, and that self-actualization that you just went through of understanding where you were born and then leveraging that to make the world a better place, which is really an excellent segue into my next question. Africa Eats. You know, I'm curious to know what inspired you to create Africa Eats, and then what's the mission of Africa Eats as well.
It started on a phone call with a giant foundation. So, 2018, I got introduced. I'm not going to name them out, but I got introduced to a foundation started by a billionaire. They claimed at the time that they cared about smallholder farmers, right?
Hmm.
The farmers of the world. It's like a billion people. Farmers who live on an acre, half acre, 2 acres, 3 acres. Like, farm it by hand, where their machine is generally a hoe, and a sickle. Uh, and literally, that's a billion households. That's like half the world's population. All right, so I'm talking to this foundation, again, founded by a billionaire. They claim to care about these people. And at the time, I had invested in a bunch of companies in Africa, about 17, I think it was at the time, um, all that worked with smallholder farmers to buy their outputs and get it to market. So I'm telling this foundation about these companies. I'm excited about them. I'm trying to find the money. It's basically my job at that point. I'd given them a little bit of money, but not what they needed. I gave them some of the advice they needed and continued to do that. But they needed a lot more. So I'm talking to this associate, this junior guy at this foundation, and I'm telling him about East Africa Fruits, which buys from, at that time, hundreds of farmers, now thousands, and who else? Giassi, the fish farm that taught people how to farm fish instead of hunt fish. And again, 17 companies. And we get to the part where I ask them, well, how do you guys invest? Like, how do you take your money and get it into the hands of these companies that really need it so it can trickle down to the farmers? And the answer was, well, the smallest check we can write is $5 million. And at this point, I'm like, well, the biggest company I just told you about was earning like $1.5 million that year. And so you can't take $5 million into a company of that scale. It's the wrong size check. And that was the biggest company. The smallest company I had in the portfolio at the time was like $50,000 a year. They needed $50,000. They didn't need $5 million. They needed $50,000. This billionaire couldn't give it to them because of the structure that he set up his foundation. So I turned to the associate and I said, well, what if we put them all together into something, as a holding company, an investment holding company? You give us the $5 million. We already know these companies. We'll distribute it out to them. Together, they could use $5 million. And he said, yeah, that sounds like it could work. And then like 2 months later, he left the foundation. So that foundation did not fund Africa Eats, nor did the next 10 foundations I talked to, nor did the next 10 government offices, nor next 100 investors. But then what happened was there was a pandemic, if you missed the news. So literally, I'm lying on the couch. It's end of February, beginning of March 2020, and I got COVID-19. Wow. I'm one of the first 100 people in the country to get COVID-19. Lucky me.
Right.
Not a terrible case. So I'm just literally lying on the couch with flu symptoms. We know it's COVID-19, but people were still like trying to figure out what the hell this thing was back then. And I'm lying there thinking, okay, I've been trying to get Africa Eats funded for years. There could be a problem here. Like, there's now hundreds of people in the U.S. with this disease. There's clearly no end in sight. It was the very beginning.
Right.
Even if a vaccine gets invented in the next year or so, it ain't going to make it all the way to Africa, right? It's not going to cover 1 billion people in Africa. There are going to be millions of people who are going to die over there, and there's going to be a lot more hunger. So I said, I had investors in some other things I was doing. And I said, hey, I'm having a webinar. I held it on the 31st of March after I felt much better. And I pitched them this idea of, let's fund these companies. Let's not wait for the big foundations to step up. Let's just fund them. Those investors stepped up with some money. And so we got Africa Eats off the ground. And so now we're 30 companies, various sizes, but all in Africa, all working on food systems. And I don't actually remember what question you asked me, but that's how we got Africa Eats off the ground.
No, that I asked you was the mission, but you answered it within that context as well.
Yeah. So the mission itself is, how do we lessen hunger and poverty in Africa? And the answer, from years of research and a decade in working in this space, it has to be with for-profit companies. We have to solve the problem not with charity. We have to solve the problem with for-profit companies that buy from farmers and get that product to market. And we need private capital to go and grow these companies. And that's the only way we can scale it.
You share it because it spoke to your perseverance and your commitment to the goal, first of all, because I know that the journey of raising capital is definitely not an easy journey. It's not for the meek at all. You got to get comfortable with hearing no,
Oh, yeah. Way more often than not. And it's true. Just be clear. It's true for the entrepreneurs and it's true for the fund managers as well.
Well, I'm curious to know, are there any kind of companies in Africa that's food related that you will not work with?
We tend to work with commodity foods. We don't have any coffee in our portfolio. We don't have any cocoa. We
Mm.
don't have any of the high end foods that's kind of export only.
Okay.
We work with maize and soy and sorghum and pineapples and bananas and fish and chicken and things people eat on the continent.
Okay.
We're trying to solve hunger and solving the basic problem is there's plenty of food grown in Africa. Half of it gets lost on the way to the market. 40% gets
Yes.
lost on the way to the market, and therefore the continent as a whole imports food. We need to get rid of that import. It needs to be an exporting continent, not an importing continent.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, what is the criteria that you look for as an investor when you're looking at investing in a particular company? Is it only companies in Africa, or do you invest in any socially conscious company?
Yeah, my other company is called Fledge. We invest in any socially or environmentally conscious company anywhere in the world, and we've done that with 100 and something companies in I don't know 36 countries, something like
Hmm.
that. But since the pandemic, my daily focus has been more on just in Africa.
Okay.
In all cases, what we look for is team impact and odds of success. So, great team, big impact, at least national scale impact. The villages are nice. I wish I could help everybody everywhere in the world, but I'm just limiting myself to national scale businesses and odds of success as in businesses. It could be generally by the time I find them, they're already profitable. They could be
Okay.
small. They could be $20,000 a year, but profitably running $20,000 a year. I don't like I don't do unicorn hunting. I don't like to burn millions of dollars to see if a business plan can work or not.
Hmm.
I much prefer to find a small business that works and help it scale up to be a big business that works.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Is there one decision that you've made that's been the most significant or most meaningful in your life?
Yeah, I used to be a techie. So I spent first. I'm 30 years into entrepreneurship. I spent 20 years as a tech guy, starting software companies. Uh, the goal was to be make a lot of money, solve a few problems along the way, but the goal was to make a lot of money.
Hmm.
The biggest change I made in my life was in 2011, and I stopped doing that. I started saying, entrepreneurship's hard. You're going to fail more often than you succeed. Do the thing that has the most impact in the world. Worst case is you have impact and lose money versus just lose money.
Hmm.
Best case is you make the world better.
So I'm just curious. That's a big pivot, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so, is there something that triggered that pivot that just say, okay, I'm gonna go in this direction full steam?
Yeah, it was an accident. I accidentally discovered there was a business school in my neighborhood.
Hmm.
I live in suburban Seattle. I went over there and check it out. Not to go to business school. I've never been to business school. I went over there as I think I was 18-year serial entrepreneur at that point. And I said, "Hey, I've been looking for a place to give back," which was true. Could you use me? And they said, "Yeah, I'm sure we could use you." And they put me in the back of the classroom in their entrepreneurship class, and that was fun. What was the reason why that ended up changing my life is it was the first business school in the world to teach how to do good through business.
Hmm.
So they were teaching social entrepreneurship and impact investing. We didn't use those words back then, but that's what they were teaching. And after hanging out there for 9 months, I couldn't do another tech company.
Understood. Understood. I come from a tech background as well, and that logical thinking has me uh, being very um, logical in how I approach systems. I'm a systems guy,
Yeah.
and so I say that because as a systems guy, I've developed around the term conscious leader. I developed my definition of it, what I consider to be 8 core virtues of being a conscious leader. And I just want to share those with you because I want to set the context for my next question. And that is for my own true north process, not to say that I'm there, but where I'm aspiring to be is a person who's principle centered, value driven, um, action oriented, results focused, growth minded, servant leader, accountability acceptor, and a grateful spirit. And so I look to kind of connect with folks who have similar virtues, not all eight, but definitely the growth minded part. So,
Mhm.
with that being said, do you have any kind of process or do you have certain things you look for in connecting with individuals?
Oh, in terms of like criteria like that?
Yes.
No, you just know it when you see it.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I don't have a checklist for people. I
Okay.
checklist for companies, but not checklist for the people. I said my criteria is great team, impact, odds of success, and I have my pick of the litter when it comes to people. I got thousands of people reaching out for help and money,
I'm
and
sure.
yeah, you just know it. It's obvious.
Okay.
And I also need that entrepreneurial spark, right? Which has another 8, 10, 15, bullets to it. But
Yes.
you don't have to go through a checklist. It's just obvious.
Excellent. Excellent. Now, my focus is really about making connections. I love building relationships with individuals. I love particularly individuals who are conscious, that have a higher purpose behind what they're doing other than just making money. And so, within that context, I always ask the question, what would be a great connection for you?
Yeah. The next billionaire who's just starting down this path, and getting to them before they choose to do things like $5 million minimum checks.
Ah,
Like, so I don't know who this person is. Um, it would have been great if I knew a month ahead of time that Jeff Bezos and his wife were breaking up. Uh, like to get to Mackenzie before she decided whatever her pattern is to go and invest.
yes.
That would have been perfect to meet Mackenzie at that point. It's too late now. She has her own methodology now. And Melinda already had a methodology, so another breakup in Seattle. Too late for that one, but there's a whole bunch of other billionaires and 100 millionaires and whatnot. We just have to catch the next one at the right time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And of all things you've accomplished in your life, is there any one that stands out as the most rewarding to you?
It's always the one I'm working on at the moment. So currently, Africa Eats is by far the most rewarding thing I've done. And before that, it was Fledge, which I'm still doing, which is definitely the most way more rewarding than all the tech stuff I did put together. Not monetarily rewarding, but consciously rewarding.
Excellent.
The tech tech
Now,
tech made more money, right? Tech powered the lifestyle at the moment, right? Or at least took the pressure off.
understandable. Tech changed my life as well. Now, one of the things that I do, I look for understanding when I meet people, kind of what their morning rituals are. Like for me, my morning ritual, one of my morning rituals is to wake up each day and go to my gratitude moment to say, well, here's the things I'm grateful for, because it sets a context for how I'm going to deal with the rest of the day. And I noticed that you bring a lot of energy to the conversation. You seem very passionate and you also seem very positive as well. So I'm wondering, are there any morning rituals that you go through to kind of put you in that mindset?
No, I tell what I tell a lot of my students. It came from a book called "The Monk and the Riddle." There's drive and there's passion.
Hmm.
Drive gets you out of the house and gets the kids to school, gets them picked up, gets them to the activities. Right, it's something you have to do.
Right.
You chose to be a parent, but drive makes you do the work to be the parent. Passion gets you out of bed in the morning because you're excited to go do it. So I don't have to have a ritual to get me out of bed. I have a calendar of meetings with people from all over the world, and most of them need my help. That gets me up in the morning in order to go and help them. And then in that ritual, in that morning moment, uh, I do. I have a few places where I do good thinking. One of them is in the shower in the morning. Like it
Hmm.
wakes me. I'm not a morning person, so I need that shower to wake up.
Hmm.
But often, once or twice a week, will be the random thought that pops up in the shower that I hadn't thought of before.
Hmm.
Um, and those are sometimes exciting, and most of them don't go anywhere. But it's like, oh, I hadn't thought of it in that direction before.
Hmm.
And then that shower is a little longer than normal, and then I'm rushed. But I just have these lovely little random thoughts in the morning.
Okay. What advice would you give to potential businesses looking to get your attention? Like, what would be the best way to get you to say, okay, because of all the businesses you're looking at, all the opportunities, what would make you say, I'm going to give attention to this particular plan, ideal?
Yeah, unfortunately, there's no one way. So I literally will look at thousands of companies per year. It's always through it's almost always 99.9999% through an application process.
Okay.
If you want to get into Fledge, go to the Fledge website, hit the apply button. You got to go in there through Africa Eats. We don't have an adjustment, but Fledge is our process. You got to go through there. But I work with a lot of other, Fledge is a network of accelerators. So I work with a lot of other programs as well. They all have their own application processes. So the question is, what makes you pop up? Last time I just did this for the Land Accelerator Africa. We had 1,400 applications.
Hmm.
So when I'm in hour 5, literally, when I'm like 5 hours into looking at applications one after the other, trying to do, 45 seconds to a minute on average, which ones get my attention for 3 minutes instead of 10 seconds? They have a business model I've never seen before, which is rare when you see 10,000 companies.
Right.
That is showing some signs of success. Signs of success. My favorite sign of success is one question says, how much money did you ever invest in this company? And the next question is, how much did you earn in the last 12 months? If you earned more than you invested, that's interesting. But that's not enough because we get a lot of those now. And I want to see that in either a business I know with a new business model, or something I've never seen, or something completely different I've never seen before. Just a brand new idea, which is rare, even rarer than new business models.
Okay.
And sometimes it's something simple. There's kind of a dichotomy. It can be the novelty, and then the other side is the certainty side, which is the less risky side. And so, like, I like honey companies. Africa Eats has 5 honey companies. We have very few companies in our portfolio that do something that some other company does in the portfolio, but we have 5 honey companies.
Hmm.
And I've seen, I don't know, 100 honey companies in the last year.
Okay. Interesting. Now, with you being a servant leader that you are and taking the responsibility of wanting to bring capital to so many businesses and reviewing so many different applications and basically taking on so many other people's in needs energy into you as you read each application, as you talk to any particular investor or a business looking for capital, what do you do to kind of detox, to kind of get yourself away from just a service mindset and just kind of unwind and just relax and just get into yourself? What do you do for that experience?
For a long time, I didn't have any hobbies. It was just work and parenting. But my kids are getting bigger now, so there's less parenting. I got 2 off in college. These days, it's watching other people's hobbies on YouTube. Uh,
Okay.
I I built a boat last year. That was a nice hobby.
What
But
size?
oh my God, is that a frustrating process? Like, it was good and it got me moving and whatnot. But everything you do that's interesting has some frustration to it, right? Like I
Right.
picked up chess in the last 2 years too in the pandemic. Like, it's fun, but oh my God, is it frustrating? Because more often than not, you lose because you made a mistake.
Right.
Whereas when you watch other people do their stuff on YouTube, you don't have any frustration.
That's
They
true.
might show you their mistakes, but they're not your mistakes; they're their mistakes. And so I've gotten deep on a whole bunch of hobbies. I know how to do a whole lot of things that I never knew how to do before. I didn't know how to build a boat. I learned it watching YouTube. I literally was watching like 4 channels of people building boats, and then I said, I should do that. I have a garage. I can park the car outside, and I built a boat. And I knew how to do everything from watching it from others. So
Wow.
you're talking about learning mindset earlier. Um,
Yes.
but I've done this with machining. I don't own any machine tools to do that. I've done this with latest one would be like how to electrify a car, how to buy a classic car and turn it into an electric car. That looks like a
Interesting.
really, really fun process. It is excruciatingly frustrating.
Interesting.
That I really don't want to do in real life, but it's fun to watch other people bang their head against the wall on that one.
Interesting. Interesting. Two more questions for you. One of the questions, and I think you may have already answered it, but I'm just going to twist the question differently to see if your answer changes. And that is, um, what would be a keen connection for you? And I say keen connection, I'm not playing on my name or my company name. I'm identifying a keen connection as someone of financial resources, the social capital, the overall success in their career and their lives that you admire, who, if you would get connected to them and they added you to their inner circle, that would change your life or gradually improve your life and your business exponentially. So, for example, for me, that would be Magic Johnson. He's someone who I would love to connect with, pick his brain as a coach, mentor, advisor, but I don't want to connect with him and have the leverage be here and I'm here. I
Yeah.
want to build a process to him so by the time I do connect with him, he's just as interested to sit down and talk with me as I am with him. And so, with that being said, who would be a king connection for you in that context?
Yeah, I don't have a named person there. Although I watched Magic as a kid play in LA, so that, I'll take that one too. But he's not fun in Africa as far as I know. Yeah, I'm looking for realistically, I'm looking for that millionaire who is about to wake up to have that moment I had in 2011.
Hmm.
Who could write the $1 million check, right? And a big enough millionaire that they could write $1 million check to make a difference.
Hmm.
And I'm always looking for this is what I do for a living as I do networking, trying to find these people.
Oprah could be a great connection. I know she does a lot of work in Africa as well.
Yeah. But again, that might be too big. That might be too big a leap, and what I'm doing might be too small.
Hmm.
That's that issue I had when I kicked off this process with Africa Eats was their checks were the wrong size.
Ah,
Um,
ah.
and so while I could put $20 million to work tomorrow, odds of someone saying, "Yeah, I believe you. Here's $20 million" is low. But
Hmm.
the odds of having someone who's a $20 million, 20 millionaire or 30 millionaire, 40 millionaire say, instead of billionaire like Oprah, I think she's about $1 billion. Uh,
Yes.
but someone saying, "Oh, wow, oh my God, I have too much money. Like I've woken up and now I realize that I have more money than I need to live for the rest of my life. Why don't I take $1 million and go do something good with it?" Yeah, I could take $1 million or two or five, but that $1 million check would make a huge difference to my 30 companies.
Excellent. Excellent. Then my last question is, and this is something I always believe that you can tell a lot about a person by the books that they read or don't read. And so, with that being said, are there any books that you find that have shaped you and formed you, or that maybe even a book that your spirit says right now in the moment, here's a book I would recommend for the listening audience to
I got
actually.
a whole lot of them. I've been reading economics books for the past few years and writing book reports on my blog. The first one to kick off that whole series was Capital in the 21st Century,
Hmm.
which is like 600 pages long, and I think I'm one of 4 people ever finished it. Um, so I don't know if I recommend other people read it, but it's got some really good stuff in it. The latest one in this series I just finished was Money by Jacob Goldstein,
Hmm.
the NPR guy.
Yes.
Um, that was really well written. It read like a Planet Money episode,
Hmm.
a little longer. He did a really good job of summarizing a whole bunch of much more boring books. Um, and then you also talk about hobbies. I do have one other thing that keeps me busy, which does tie into this, which is I read Harry Potter fan fiction.
Really? Okay.
There are 820,000 fan fiction stories that are published on the internet on one website, um,
Wow.
a fan fiction website. And what I find fascinating about reading Harry Potter fan fiction is how could you possibly have 800,000 stories? Like, and yeah, there's some
Yes.
duplicates in there, like close duplicates. But the whole idea of what if, the whole idea that comes back to my work as an entrepreneur to actually pull this back in, an investor, which is plan A is not going to work. Like whatever you think you're doing is wrong. What you're doing is not going to work. You're going to have to find another way. And plan B is probably not going to work either. And plan C is probably not going to work either. You're going to wind up on plan F or G or H or if it's Z, you're too late. You're going to run out of money. And so this whole concept in nonfiction world, what would happen if? And so I get off on reading it because that's basically it's the fiction version of what I do for a living. Like, how's this going to fail? Okay, well, how's Voldemort going to get defeated next time? And,
yes.
Yeah, and he always gets defeated. I haven't read one where he wins.
Out of 800,000, he always gets defeated.
I haven't read 800,000 yet, but I probably read 1,000 of these stories, and he always loses somehow. But
that's interesting. Well, thank you for the time, for investing the time and energy into the interview. I just want to give you an opportunity to say any closing thoughts that you might want to share with our listening audience, and any contact information that you want to share if someone's going to get in contact with you.
Sure. So my biggest advice to everyone is pick something to do in the world that's impactful. Worst case is you made an impact and didn't make the money you wanted out of it. But at least you had an impact. And contact information, there's a bunch for me. It's fledge.co for Fledge, africaeats.com. And then my personal stuff is on lunarmobiscuit.com. And don't try and spell it. Just ask Google for Luni and entrepreneurs, or Luni and investing, or Luni in Africa. It'll get you there.
Excellent. Well, I definitely want to be I'm sure you might have heard it many times before, but I definitely want to add to it. Thank you for the work that you're doing in Africa. I think that's a very important cause, and the businesses you're impacting. I'm sure that your brilliance, your passion, and your hunger for making that change is something that has changed lives of millions of people already. And so I want to thank you for them.
Well, thanks for having me on. Thanks for letting me share my story.
Thank you for sharing your story. You have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.